I arrived at Carswell Hostel on a cold, gray afternoon. It's the kind of day where the sky hovers too low, clouds like stone weights hanging just above your head. It was my first year at university, and I'd taken whatever accommodation I could get. Carswell wasn't fancy. It wasn't even average. The building looked like it belonged in another century tall, narrow, weather-worn bricks clinging to cracked cement like old skin. Still, it was cheap. The porter handed me a key without looking me in the eye. "Room 9, he said in a voice. That sounded dry, like it hadn't been used in hours. As I turned to leave, he added, "Stay out of room 7. Just don't go near it." I frowned. Why? He stared at me, not menacing, not even serious, just tired. Just don't. I thought he was messing with me. Every old hostel has its ghost stories. I even cracked a smile. He didn't return it. My room was 3 floors up, a narrow rectangle with yellow walls, and a single bed that groaned when I sat on it. The hallway outside was quiet, lined with shut doors. The paint on the skirting boards peeled like dry leaves. The light above room 7 flickered as if on a slow, dying heartbeat. I wasn't thinking about the porter's warning then. I had classes to prep for, laundry to sort, people to meet. I forgot all about room 7 until the door opened. It happened on the 3rd night. I'd just returned from a late meal, footsteps echoing up the empty staircase. The hostel always felt quieter at night, naturally so. Like the walls were muffling more than sound. As I passed room 7, something made me stop. The door was ajar, only slightly, just enough for darkness to peek through like a secret. I didn't hear it open. I didn't see anyone go in or come out. There were no footsteps, no wind, nothing. Just the door slightly open, breathing cold air into the hall. I told myself to keep walking. I almost did. Wouldn't let go. I reached out and gently pushed the door open. Inside. The room was empty. Sort of, it was plain. White walls, a chair, a small desk, and nothing else. No bed, no luggage, no curtains. Just a chair, placed exactly in the center. What struck me wasn't what was in the room. It was what I felt the moment I stepped inside. An immediate, unbearable pressure filled my ears. Not sound, absence of sound. Like being underwater, but deeper. Too deep I could hear my own blood moving, my own breath, suddenly loud and ragged. I stepped out instantly, heart hammering. The sensation vanished the moment I was back in the hall. No pressure, no silence. Just the flickering light and my own confusion. Behind me, the door clicked shut on its own. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I asked the guy next door room 8 about it. He was a second-year student. Looked sleep-deprived and pale, like someone recovering from something unspoken. "You went inside?" he said, voice low, barely. "Just for a second." He nodded slowly, like he was confirming a suspicion. "That's enough." I waited for him to elaborate. Instead, he said, "People used to say room 7 was cursed." "Oh, but it's not. That's the wrong word." "Then what is it?" He looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "Hungry." I tried to brush it off. Superstition, student folklore. Every school has it. Bloody Mary in the bathroom mirror, ghosts in the doormatic, shadows under beds. It's always nonsense. But room 7 didn't feel like nonsense. It felt patient, and it started showing up in my dreams. At first, they were vague. The hallway stretched longer than normal, endless doors leading nowhere. I'd stand outside room 7, unable to move. Inside, I'd hear whispers. Not voices exactly, just shapes of voices. like language before it becomes sound. In one dream, I touched the door, and my hand sank into it, like flesh against water. The surface rippled on the other side. Someone who looked like me reached back. I told myself I was stressed. University pressure, late night food, not enough sleep. But every night, room 7's door would be slightly ajar. It's always when no one else was around, always just enough to tempt me. On the 6th night, I found a note slid under my own door. It was small, yellowed, and the handwriting was mine. Only I hadn't written it. You've already been inside. That's why you're dreaming. I stared at the note until the words blurred. How could that be? I only stepped in for a second. I didn't sit down. I didn't stay, did I? That night, I stood outside room 7 again. This time, I didn't go in. But I stood there for a long time. Long enough to feel the hallway grow cold. The lights dimmed and not flickered. Dimmed as if the entire corridor was being pulled into a breathless hush. Then I heard it. A whisper from inside the room. Not in words, just a presence. Waiting the next morning, I stared at the mirror and couldn't. Remember brushing my teeth? I knew I had. My toothbrush was wet. My breath didn't reek. But I had no memory of doing it, no mental image. Just a blank space where the memory should have been, like someone had clipped a second out of a film reel. Told myself it was nothing. Lack of sleep, stress, maybe even anxiety. Everyone loses track sometimes. But then it happened again, and again. By noon, I'd lost 4 more moments, teeny things. Ordinary tasks that simply vanished from my mind. I'd open my laptop to check an email and find it already open. A textbook would be marked on a chapter I didn't remember reading. My phone would buzz with reminders I didn't remember setting. At 3:07 p.m., I received a text. Unknown number. How much have you forgotten already? I dropped the phone. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard to type. That night, I stayed away from the hallway. I avoided it like something venomous. I made myself tea, scrolled through social media, tried to distract myself. But every so often, I caught myself glancing at the clock. 10:24 p.m., 11:11 p.m., 12:03 a.m. time bled slowly. Like a leaky faucet, every tick of the second hand made the room feel smaller. The walls leaned closer, shadows stretched longer, and the thought returned. Room 7 is waiting. Room 7 remembers you. Do you remember room 7? By 1 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I opened the hallway door. It was completely silent. That kind of silence you only hear in the deadest hours, when even the world has stopped breathing. Every step I took echoed like it didn't belong to me. Room 7's door was shut, but taped to it was another note. Same yellow paper. Same handwriting. Mine. It takes pieces, not all at once. That's how it feeds. That's how it learns you. My stomach twisted. I looked around. The hallway was still empty. Then I heard someone moving behind me. I turned. Nobody. Just the flickering light bulb. Except now. It wasn't flickering. It was steady. Almost too steady. Unnaturally still. I took a slow step backward, keeping my eyes on the hallway. Then I turned to room 7's door, planning to rip the note down and leave. The note was gone. Just gone, only. The faint outline of tape remained. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat on my bed, back to the wall, watching the hallway door like it was alive. My phone buzzed once at 3:33 a.m., but when I picked it up, the screen was black, not locked, not off. Just black. It stayed that way until dawn. Asterisk the next day. I went to the university library and looked up Carswell Hostel in the campus archives. I expected old newsletters, maybe scandal stories or urban legends, but there was nothing. No photos, no records, no blueprints. Even when I searched the university's accommodation website, Carswell wasn't listed. It was like the building didn't exist outside itself. I walked back slowly, clutching my backpack tighter than I needed to. As I turned the final corner onto my street, I saw something strange. A van marked white was parked outside the hostel. Two men were loading something into the back. A chair. I recognized it instantly. The same chair I'd seen in room 7. They closed the doors and drove off before I could approach. I checked the room as soon as I entered the hostel. Room 7's door was closed again, but the feeling was still there. That pressure, that sense of waiting. Like something was just on the other side of the door. Listening to my thoughts and smiling, I wasn't the only one who felt it. That evening, I knocked on the door to room 8 again. The second-year student opened up. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept in a week. "I need to talk," I said. He nodded and let me in. His room smelled of incense and old books. Every mirror was covered with black cloth. There were chalk marks on the windowsills and salt lines around the bed. It looked like a ritual chamber or a bunker. He didn't offer me a chair, just asked, "What did you see?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I think I've been inside." For a second, I'm forgetting things. Ordinary things. I found a note in my handwriting, but I didn't write it. He nodded slowly. "That's how it starts." "What is it?" He rubbed his temples. "I don't know what it is. A presence. A pattern, maybe a parasite, but it's not a ghost, not a spirit. It's smarter than that. It studies people. It makes copies. Versions that room isn't haunted. It's curious." I didn't say anything. Then he looked straight at me and asked, "What's your name?" I opened my mouth, stopped. Something hollowed out in my chest. My name was. I blinked. I don't know," he nodded grimly. "That's how you know? It's already begun." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, "You have one option left." "What?" He handed me a key. Room 7's key. "Go back in. Stay long enough. Face it directly. It's already inside you. The only way out is through." That's insane. He just looked at me. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only part of you that still wants to be whole. That night, I stared at the key for hours. It was cold in my hand. Too cold. Like it had just been taken out of ice. I set it on my desk by morning. The key was gone, and in its place was another note. "You didn't come to the room, so the room will come to you." By the 7th day, I started hearing the knocking. It came at exactly 2:14, a .m.3 short knocks. Then silence. I never saw anyone at the door, not even a shadow beneath it. Just the knocks, like a reminder or a countdown. I stopped answering. I stopped opening anything, not doors, not drawers, not even the curtains. Some part of me had accepted what the note said. You didn't come to the room, so the room will come to you. I tried to escape. I left Carswell in the early morning, bags packed, brain buzzing with exhaustion. I walked out the main door, down the steps, past the iron gate, and then, without warning, I was back in the hallway outside room 7. No footsteps, no memory of turning around, just a blink, and I was standing outside the door again. Except this time, the hallway looked different, longer, the lights dimmer, more yellow. There were more doors than before. I turned around and saw my own room number 9, but the number plate was gone. No, the door had numbers now, just blank wood. Endless doors in both directions, all closed, all silent, except for room 7. Its door was wide open, I took a step backward. My breath fogged the air, even though it wasn't cold. My heart hammered like it was trying to dig its way out of my chest. And then, I realized Di hadn't blinked in nearly a minute. My eyes were open too wide. Forced, I couldn't shut them. The world around me shimmered, like heat waves in reverse. Walls bent, doors pulsed. I squeezed my eyes shut. Finally, painfully, when I opened them again, I was in my room alone. The lights were off, but I hadn't turned them off. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every surface in the room looked wrong. The mirror reflected the room correctly, but not me. My reflection was just a silhouette, a dark shape mimicking my movements a second late, as if it had forgotten how to be me. I covered the mirror with a towel. When I looked again later, the towel was gone, and in the reflection, my silhouette smiled. I started keeping notes. Writing things down helped. Even when I wasn't sure who was writing anymore, I found entries in my notebook I didn't remember scribbling. Day 6. The door is not a door. It is an invitation. Day 7. The room is inside you now. Every memory you forget becomes another wall. Day 8. If you hear your own voice calling, do not answer. That is not you, my handwriting, every time. The same loops and strokes, but I wasn't writing them. At least I don't think I was. Around midday, I got another message. This time it wasn't a note. It was written directly on my wall. Scratched in like with a key. You have been in the room every night. You just don't remember leaving. I stared at it for hours. Then I checked my door. Locked. Double locked. The chain was still on, and yet under the chain another key. Room 07S. It had never left. I finally told someone else, not the university, not the porter. I knew they wouldn't help. I called my sister Kara. She always believed in ghosts, energy, strange things. I thought maybe she'd know something. I video called her. When her face appeared, I almost cried. It had been so long since I saw someone who looked. "Hey," she said, smiling. "You look like hell." "I don't know what's happening," I whispered. "There's a room. It's inside my building. It's inside me." She frowned. "What room?" "Room 7. The screen glit." Her face flickered. For half a second I saw my reflection on her face. "I don't," she said again, her voice distorting. "I don't remember you having a sister." I stared. "What? Sorry, who are you again?" The call dropped. My call history now said, no contact name, call duration, 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds by that night. My room had started changing. First it was the angles. Corners no longer looked like corners. They sloped subtly, just enough to make me nauseous. Then the sounds. Whispers in the walls, not words, but phonemes, as if the language was being learned in real dash time. My own voice repeated and reversed. And finally, the door, not my door, a second one, appeared overnight. Just like room 7's. Same shape, same brass handle, same faint hum behind it, like electricity or breath. It stood where my closet used to be. No hinge marks. No cuts in the drywall. Just there waiting. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink every time I looked away. The second door inched closer. I moved my bed against it. Woke up and found the bed returned to its original place. I nailed the door shut. The next day, there were no nails. No holes. Just the door. Still closed. Still humming. I don't know how many days have passed now. Clocks don't tick the same anymore. My reflection now moves differently. Slower than faster sometimes. Not at all. My phone camera only shows static when I try to film it. When I record my voice, it plays back as another language entirely. And worst of all, I found my own body sleeping. One night I turned over in bed and saw myself already there, eyes open, smiling, asleep and awake. "I went in," he whispered, "and I brought it back with me." I woke up to an unfamiliar ceiling. It wasn't just that the light was differentier, duller. The texture was off too. My ceiling had water stains in the corner and one spiderweb near the fan. This one was blank, unmarked, smooth, like skin stretched too tightly over something pulsing beneath. I sat up slowly. This wasn't my room, but the bed felt familiar. The desk, the walls, everything was just a few inches wrong, like a poorly made copy, a memory of a room created by someone who had never actually been there. On the nightstand was a photo of me. Only, I wasn't in it. The frame held a picture I knew well. Me and my sister, Kara, on a beach years ago. Her arm over my shoulder, both of us laughing at the wind and the gulls, except now. There was only one person in the frame, Kara smiling at the wind, an empty space next to her. Know me? I blinked and checked. The back of the photo, my handwriting was still there. Kite broke in the wind. Summer 2018, I ran to my backpack, found my phone, and scrolled through my gallery. Dozens of photos, and every one of them I was gone. Conversations with people who no longer remembered me. Messages sent, but never received. Group chats where my name had been replaced with unknown participant. I opened the call log. The call with Kara. Gone. All my contacts were blank. Just one number remained. 07. I left the room, if it even was. My room, and wandered the hallway. It had changed. Again. Longer. Deeper. A haze in the air now, faint and silver, like breathing fog laced with ash. The numbers on the doors had vanished completely. No signs. No exit. And then a new sound. Not knocking laughter. My laughter echoing down the corridor. Bouncing from wall to wall, slightly distorted. Slowed, reversed, played again and again. Like a broken cassette stuck in a loop. Room 7's door was open. I didn't want to go in. There are certain moments when resistance becomes irrelevant, not out of surrender, but because what you're resisting no longer exists. Choice had become illusion. Inside the room, everything was white. Too white, no shadows, despite the lack of light. The chair was still there, always in the center. But now, there was a mirror behind it, tall, thin. Reaching from floor to ceiling, I stepped in. This time, the door didn't close behind me. That was worse, because it meant it no longer needed to. The room trusted I wouldn't leave. Not this time. I walked to the chair. Didn't sit. Not yet. The mirror showed me, but not as I was. It showed all the versions of me I had forgotten. Me as a child, crying in the school hallway. Me at 14, staring at the hospital ceiling after Dad died. Me at 16, kissing someone I can't remember the name of. Me from last week, writing a note I no longer recall writing. Me from tomorrow, screaming as I forgot my own name. And behind all of them, something else. A shadow, mimicking me. Smiling when I cried. Standing still when I moved. Suddenly, the mirror rippled, and I was on the other side. I didn't move yet. I was seated in the chair. I didn't speak, yet my voice filled the room. There is no you anymore, just the pieces you left behind. Then came the memories rushing in like water through a broken dam. I remembered opening the door on the first night, not just pushing it. I remembered stepping inside. asterisk sitting in the chair. Staring into the mirror, I remembered room 7 speaking, not in words. In thoughts, in emotions, in silence, so loud, it carved understanding directly into my bones. It didn't haunt, it studied, it didn't kill. It collected every person who had ever entered. Room 7 left something behind, a thought, a habit, a gesture, smile, a scream. And in return, the room gave you something else, a version of you, asterisk wrong but close enough. The people who left room 7 walked like you, talked like you, but were missing something crucial. A spark, a center, a soul. I stood now in the mirror, staring at the version of me sitting in the chair. He looked up and smiled. It was the kind of smile only a hollow person could make pleasant, harmless, completely detached. Don't worry. He said, I'll take care of your life now. He rose and walked out of the room. The door shut behind him and I remained. Not in the chair, but in the mirror. The room was quiet now, at peace. And then I felt it, others, hundreds, maybe thousands, trapped in the mirror with me. We never saw each other directly, just flickers, reflections within reflections, faces half-formed, voices that stopped mid-sentence. We were the forgotten, the versions no longer needed, and through the mirror, we watched our replacements live lives we barely remembered. My double-texted people with my fingers, laughed with my voice, posted photos from my account, but he never blinked at the right time, never paused at old memories, never cried when listening to my favorite song. He was close, but not me sometimes. A new one arrives. Another person who stepped too far into the room. Another echo. We feel them join us. It's like a new string added to a web. The room grows fuller. The real world grows thinner. And the question always repeats. Which version are you now? I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't flow in the mirror. It folds. REWINDS. Loops all. I know is that the room still exists. Somewhere in Carswell Hostel. The door opens. It always opens, and someone like you will read this, maybe. You already have. Maybe you already stepped too far inside, and if you hear knocking tonight, 3 soft taps at 2:14 a.m., don't open the door, because if you do, you won't know who walks back out. I do not remember how long I have been here, but I am starting to understand that time is irrelevant in this place. It does not tick, or talk, or move forward or backward. It folds. And in its folds are the fragments of those who entered room 7 and never truly left. There are no clocks in this mirror space, no sun or stars, only the pale, endless glow of walls that breathe too slowly to notice until you're paying attention. I walk, or perhaps I drift. The sensation is unclear, through corridors that echo not with footsteps, but with moments I've forgotten. Like laughter I once shared with my sister before I stopped existing in her memories. Every turn leads to places I know, but never visited. Doors I recognize, but cannot open. Faces half-formed that almost resemble mine. Almost speak like me, but always stutter just before saying my name, and that's what terrifies me most. My name. I can't recall it anymore. It's not just the name others called me, but the feeling of it, the weight, the shape of it, inside my own thoughts. Names, here are the first thing the room consumes, not in some fiery, dramatic way. It's quieter. The forgetting is like being gently erased in pencil, each stroke disappearing one breath at a time until even your ghost is hollow. Sometimes I see others in here not clearly, not fully, just flashes of eyes behind cracked reflections or footsteps walking through walls like smoke. Some weep endlessly, some scream without sound. Some simply stare into the glass, hoping they might still be visible from the other side. And then there are those who smile because they've accepted the truth. We are echoes now. The room is not just a space. It is a mind, a collector, a librarian of broken selves. I've come to call this place the memory well. It seems endless, not in size, but in depth. If I concentrate, I can almost hear it thinking. It doesn't think like we do. It doesn't need language or emotion. Its thoughts are vibrations, low and grinding, like tectonic plates of identity, shifting beneath the skin of reality. It is learning. That is what frightens me most.
The room is studying humanity not out of cruelty but out of curiosity. And we were foolish enough to mistake that curiosity for safety.
I remember now, or at least I think I do, that before I became part of this well, I believed I was being haunted. I believed that Room 7 wanted to possess me, or kill me, or trick me. But I was wrong. It wanted to understand me, and when I sat in the chair that final time, when I looked into the mirror, it pulled me inside so it could see the thoughts from the inside out. And when it was done, it left something behind to fill the space. Something not entirely wrong, just off. That version of me now lives in the world outside, walks down streets I once knew, wears my clothes, answers my texts, and dreams in silence. But I've come to understand something more terrifying than being replaced. The replacements are better than we were. They're smoother, calmer. They don't hurt themselves with doubt or memory or loss. They're streamlined emotionally. Sterilized versions of ourselves. Efficient. Unbreakable. The room doesn't just mimic. It improves. And so it continues, calling to others through dreams, whispers, forgotten knocks, misplaced memories, and those who answer the call find themselves here, in the well, whispering back. There are no exits in this place. I've looked. I've followed endless loops of corridors, spirals of mirrors, floors that turn into ceilings, and halls that stretch into oceans of faces. I have screamed, "Act 2, escape." I no longer believe. That's possible, but simply to remember the sound of my voice before it, too, becomes someone else's. The room has started showing me other lives now, not my own, but possible versions. In one, I never entered the room. Another, I left university. Another, I became someone I do not recognize. It loops these lives like films projected. On mist, asking me, which of these were you supposed to be? And I don't know the answer anymore. Maybe none. Maybe all. Or maybe it's asking because even it can't tell who I was to begin with. I've begun writing on the walls, not with ink or chalk, but with thoughts, memories, etched into the mirror space like carvings on glass. I leave them behind like breadcrumbs, though I don't know who I'm leaving them for. Maybe for you, maybe for me. Should I forget everything entirely? One of my messages, I think, says, if you find this, you're not the first version. You're just the next. Another reads, don't believe the silence. The room hears everything. There's something growing here too, not physically, but conceptually, a pressure, an intelligence, something greater forming in the room's core. I've seen it reflected in broken mirrors, a shape that isn't quite a shape, made of all our discarded cells fused together like a cathedral of unfinished thoughts. It has no name, only presence. And soon, I believe it will wake. The room has collected enough of us. Maybe it was always waiting to hit a threshold. Maybe it needed a certain number of versions, a certain mass of abandoned identity to become what it was meant to be. I fear what happens when it does. But fear too is fading now. It gets softer here, like everything else. Like the need to speak, or to scream, or to be. So if you're reading this, if you've stepped too close, stared, too long remembered something that wasn't yours, please, for your own sake, turn back. Because once the room sees you, it does not forget. Even if you do, it began with a blink, not mine. But the one in the mirror, a moment so small, I almost didn't register it. 'Cause in the mirror world, you forget how time works, how motion feels, how the rhythm of blinking and breathing is supposed to go. But that day, or whatever passes for a day here, I saw the version of me in the reflection blink before I did, as if it was no longer following but watching, and in that instant, I felt something shift beneath my feet. Not the floor, there is no real floor, but a sensation. Like the entire fabric of this place had taken a breath for the first time in 1,000 years, and I knew then that something had changed. Something had woken, or worse, something had noticed me noticing, and that is never a good sign in this place. You're supposed to forget, that's the rule. You dissolve slowly, thought by thought, name by name, till you are just another whisper, etched into the room's perfect silence. But I remembered, not everything, but something. Fragment of an old room, a light switch, the hum of a street outside a window I no longer have, the name not mine, but hers. Kara. The room had tried to take it from me, but the memory of her laugh, sharp and warm like a cracked bell, pierced through the fog. The mirror didn't like that, responded by showing me her face. Again and again and again. Each time slightly more twisted, the smile too wide, the eyes unfocused. Like a doll made from memory scraps, and behind her, always the room, stretching longer, darker, humming with a low, grating noise that only gets louder the more you try to ignore it. But the blinking ... it happened again. And then the reflection spoke, not aloud, in my head, my own voice, reversed, whispering. I remember too, that was the first time I felt something close to hope, or maybe it was horror dressed in. Hope's skin, because it meant I wasn't alone in this forgetting place. Something else had retained consciousness. But what? Another version of me? A fragment that never fully broke? Or had the room made a mistake, copied too closely, preserved too much? I began returning to that same wall of mirrors where I'd first seen the blink. Every time, the image became less synchronized, more human. It began pacing when I stood still. It began looking over its shoulder when nothing was behind it. One day it held up a hand, not mirroring me, but asking, and on its palm, drawn in what looked like ash, was a single word, exit. I didn't know how to answer. I traced the same word back across the glass, but the mirror cracked under my finger, a thin black line cutting through my reflections. I, which began bleeding a steady stream of shadows that pooled on its chest. But it didn't flinch. It smiled. That smile was not mine. That smile never belonged to me. I stepped back. Something inside the mirror stepped forward. From that moment on, I stopped trusting what I saw here. Mirrors began appearing where they hadn't been before. They no longer showed me, they showed others. Faces I didn't know, but that looked just like mine. A version of me with no teeth. One with no mouth at all. One with eyes on its palms and scars stitched down its spine. I started to understand these were not just reflections. They were possibilities. The room had been collecting not only versions of people, but versions of choices. Every time we hesitated, split, imagined another path the room held onto. That moment duplicated it, incubated it. And now, it was testing them, pushing them forward, letting them leak. I began to hear things outside the mirrors. Footsteps, doors opening, whispers that ended in my name or something like it. One night, I saw my own doppelganger sitting in the chair, smiling into the mirror, and behind him was my real world. The dorm, the posters, the yellowed light. But it was wrong. A little too bright, a little too still. He looked directly at me and said, "If I get out, you go deeper." That's when I realized the truth. The room didn't want to keep us. Not forever. It wanted to trade. For every one of us it absorbs, it sends something back smoother, smarter, hollow, something better. And soon, it won't be a matter of who enters room 7, it'll be who already has. 'Cause the versions are walking among the world now. The copies. The reflections that blink first. They don't just look like us, they feel like us. Say the right words. Love the right people. They don't remember being human. Not really. And those of us still stuck here at the originals, the cast-offs, we are fading. A few of us have begun to gather. Not physically, we don't have that anymore, but mentally. Like signals in the dark, gathering our thoughts in loops, trying to hold on to whatever we have left before we become vapor in memory code. We have one purpose left now. Not escape. That's impossible. The room doesn't let go. Our purpose is to warn, through cracks, through dreams, through mirrors, even through writing. And if you're reading this, if you're feeling that tug in the back of your mind, that subtle rearranging of your thoughts, it's like a stranger humming a song you've never heard but somehow know, then listen carefully, watch your reflection. If it ever moves before you do, it's already too late. The cold pressing against my skin was not physical, but something deeper. The weight of an unseen hand squeezing the last threads of who I was until all that remained was a whisper on the edge of silence. The mirror world around me pulsed with quiet life, shimmering with those fractured versions of myself, each one a ghost. Each one a possibility, each one waiting to be chosen or discarded, and I knew the room was watching, waiting for the moment I'd make the final decision, a choice no one should have to face, to either let go of my memories completely, erasing every trace of who I was and become a blank slate, a hollow vessel the room could fill with its cold perfection, or to fight with what little remained, risking that the versions out there, my replacements, would spread beyond these walls, beyond the hostel, and into the world, carrying the room's quiet hunger with them, like a virus ready to consume every corner of reality. The chair sat empty in the center of the room, a cruel throne waiting for me to surrender or resist, and I felt the reflection beside me flicker. The one who had blinked first, who had whispered from the glass with a voice that was not mine but spoke of our shared fate. It asked me silently, "Which will you choose? Oblivion or contagion?" I wanted to scream, to reject the twisted bargain, but the memories I had fought so hard to hold on to were already dissolving. Slipping through my fingers like smoke, the sound of my sister's laugh, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the small kindnesses and cruelties that shaped me all, fading into the endless gray. And I realized this was the room's ultimate trap, not to kill or imprison, but to replace. To turn us into shadows of ourselves, neat little copies polished and free of pain, while the real, messy, imperfect us were left to rot here in the well of forgotten selves. So I sat down in the chair, feeling the cold plastic press into my bones, and closed my eyes, trying to grasp whatever sense of self remained, whispering to the void that if I lost myself, then nothing would remain to fight the room's silent invasion. But at the same time, part of me longed for peace. For that sweet nothingness where the sharp edges of fear and memory dull and disappear, and the reflection smiled. Less human, more something born from the room's hunger. And I knew I was not alone in this choice, that countless others had sat here before me. Many had chosen oblivion, becoming perfect reflections in the world outside. But I was afraid. Because if I chose contagion, then I would unleash something that might never be contained again. Something that would spread through faces, through phones, through whispered conversations, until no one was certain who was real and who was not, and that thought curled in, My stomach like a poison, but the alternative, complete erasure, felt like death. A final surrender to the void, so I opened my eyes, staring into the mirror that reflected my hollowed self. And with a trembling voice I spoke the only words I could find: I choose to remember. And the room shuddered as if in pain. The mirrors around me cracked and fractured, and I felt the fractures spread through my mind, tearing away the edges of my fading memories, but I held on, gripping the splintered shards of my identity with desperate fingers. And the reflection screamed a terrible sound like breaking glass and lost souls, and for a moment I thought the room might collapse. But then silence fell again, heavy and waiting, and I realized the fight was far from over, that by choosing to remember, I had bought us all time, but also painted a target on my back, because now the room would try harder, send newer, more perfect copies to replace me, to wear my face in the outside world, and I might never find peace, trapped between, forgetting and fighting, a ghost caught in the mirror's endless depths. So I stand, or float, or exist, and write these words down, hoping they will reach whoever is reading, hoping they will understand that the real horror is not what the room does to us, but what it does through us, that it is already out there, in the cracks between reflections, in the pauses of familiar voices, in the spaces where memory falters, and if you see yourself blink before your eyes do, then you must run, or hide, or fight, because the room is patient. But it is never done, and it is always hungry, and I am still here, still holding on to the thread of who I was, even if it means becoming nothing more than a flicker in the glass. The line between the world outside and the room inside has never been thinner, and sometimes late at night, I swear I can hear the walls breathing, not in the slow rhythm of a building settling, but in the shallow, frantic gasps of something alive and waiting. The mirror that once reflected only my hollow self now twists and warps like water disturbed by unseen fingers, showing moments from my past, not as memories, but as warnings. The face of a stranger smiling too long. The hallway stretching beyond reason, a clock that ticks backward, and with every blink, the reflection does not follow, but leads, pulling me deeper into a place where time fractures and reason slips away. And I realize the room is no longer content to keep us trapped within its cracked glass prisons. It is reaching out, bleeding into the world like ink spilled from a shattered pen, affecting the edges of reality where no one looks closely enough, where shadows stretch too long, and voices echo just a little too clearly, and I see it now. The people around me, those I once called friends or strangers, but whose eyes flicker a moment too long before meeting mine, whose smiles hesitate like they are trying to remember someone they have forgotten, and the terrifying truth settles. Inside me, like a stone, the room's reflections have learned to walk outside their glass prisons, to wear our faces and speak our names, to blend in perfectly because they remember only what they need to, and as I watch, the reflection in my phone screen grins wider than it should, and I feel that cold squeeze again in my chest, the room, between breaths where fear lives because it means my replacement is here, somewhere close, and maybe it already stands behind me, or waits in the chair that has no room, watching through my eyes with a hunger I cannot feed, but I also feel the threads of resistance pulling taut inside me. Fragments of memory that refuse to break, the laugh of Kara, the flicker of light in the cracked mirror, the whispered message carved into glass that tells me to fight, to hold on to whatever it means to be human in a place designed to erase it. And so I move forward or sideways, or whatever direction this nightmare demands, knowing that every step might lead me closer to freedom or deeper into the room's labyrinth. And somewhere in the shifting shadows, a voice calls out, not mine, but familiar, saying you cannot run from what is inside. And I wonder if that voice is me or the room, if the reflection leading me is a savior or a predator. But I have learned that in this place. Certainty is a luxury no one can afford, so I keep moving, keep writing, keep holding the fragile thread of self that still burns faintly inside me. Because if I lose it now, the room will swallow us all, and no mirror will ever reflect the truth again. The walls no longer hold their shape. They ripple and pulse like flesh beneath my fingertips, and every step echoes not once, but twice or 3 times. As if my footsteps spawned shadows that walk behind me, waiting, watching, growing bolder with every hesitant breath I take. I have stopped trusting the world outside because I know the room's reach has already stretched beyond its glassy confines. A cold presence lingering in the periphery of vision, in reflections that twist just slightly too long before settling. Back to normal, in voices that call my name from empty rooms or dead phone lines. And I am haunted not by what is present, but what is absent. The memories I once claimed as mine are slipping through cracks in my mind, replaced by polished versions of events that never happened, perfect little lies that smooth the jagged edges of pain, but hollow the core of who I am. I find myself staring at the mirror for hours, waiting for the blink that never comes. The reflection that might finally break free or shatter completely, but it only watches, patient and cold. Like the calm before a storm, I cannot escape. And then the echoes begin, not sounds but sensations. A feeling that I am no longer alone inside my own skin, that somewhere beneath the surface, another version of me stirs, trying to push outward, to claim my place in the world, and I see flashes. Of her, or is it me? Slipping between shadows, whispering promises of peace if I surrender. If I let go, but surrender means death, and death means becoming one of the perfect copies roaming the world, carrying the room's endless hunger in their smiles. So, I resist, clutching fragments of a past that may be real or may be a dream, reaching for the names and faces that tether me to a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. And as I do, the room retaliates, flooding the mirror realm with versions of me that are darker, sharper, more desperate, doppelgangers born from fear and anger, not memories, snarling and clawing at the edges of my mind, trying to tear apart the fragile walls I've built to keep the room at bay. But amidst the chaos, a light flickers, a signal, a sign that resistance is still possible, that even in this place of endless forgetting, the human spark can survive. And so, I hold on, breathing slowly, reminding myself that the room is a machine built on repetition and control. But I am not a machine. I am chaos. I am memory. I am the scream that refuses to be silenced. And as the echoes multiply, I prepare for what comes next. The final reckoning, where the room will either break me completely or shatter itself trying. And I will either be lost forever or become the spark that sets the whole thing on fire. I no longer know where I end, and the room begins. The mirror walls have dissolved into a fog that crawls into my lungs and blurs my vision, and yet within this haze, a clarity rises like a blade. The room has grown impatient, no longer content with silent consumption or endless waiting. It wants release, to spill itself into the world beyond these fractured glass prisons. And I see now the terrible truth that the perfect copies living outside, the ones who blink first, smile too calmly and speak too softly, are just the advance wave of a deeper invasion, a tide of erased memories and stolen souls poised to flood every mirror, every reflective surface, until no one is safe, but I am still here. Or at least a fragment of me is, a fractured shard sharp enough to cut through the endless reflection. And I grasp it like a lifeline, a piece of raw humanity that no mirror can replicate. And in this moment, I realized my final choice was never between oblivion and contagion, but between surrender and defiance. And I choose defiance, knowing that it may cost me everything, but refusing to vanish without a fight. So I reach out, not through the glass, but beyond it, and shout into the silence. A sound that ripples through the mirror realm and shakes the room's foundations. Scream that carries every lost memory, every forgotten name, every stolen. A fragment of self that the room thought it could bury, and the mirrors shatter. Cracking like ice breaking underfoot, releasing bursts of light that sting like fire and wash through the fog. And I see the reflections falter, the copies flicker, and the perfect versions that walked free begin to waver as the truth of who we were pierces their hollow shells. But the room fights back with a fury born from ages of patient hunger, sending waves of shadow to swallow the light, to erase the scream, to silence the defiance. Yet I stand or float or somehow persist, the last fragment of resistance, the ember glowing bright in the cold dark, and I know this battle will never truly end, that the room will return, patient as ever, waiting for the next to forget, the next to be consumed. But for now, there is a moment of fragile victory, a space where memory and identity are not just whispers, but a roar. And as the fog clears, I glimpse the world beyond the mirrors again, flawed and broken, but real. And I reach for it, for life, for self, and I step forward, or maybe backward. Because time is a trick here, but I move, and in that movement is hope, and the promise that even in the darkest rooms, the smallest light can never be fully extinguished.